Mr. Devinaldo Paldo, the Vice President of Health, Safety, Security, and Environment of the Pertamina Hulu Energy, Ibu Dina Nurul Fitria, Member of the Board of Consumer Representative at the National Energy Council of Indonesia, Ibu Dermawati, from Director of CSR and Environmental of PT Indonesia Morowali Indonesia Park, or IMIP, and also Ms. Artemis Costarelli, the Nature Director of International Petroleum Industry Environmental Conservation Association. Good afternoon, boa tarde, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to join you today at the Indonesia Pavilion during the COP30 for this important dialogue on biodiversity action plans towards sustainable business. My sincere appreciation goes to the Pertamina for convening this session. This discussion reflects Indonesia's strong commitment to advancing climate change and biodiversity diplomacy in constructive and collaborative way, reinforcing our leadership in the UNFCCC negotiations and our readiness to work with the global community. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia is entering a pivotal stage in its development. The next 2 decades will shape how we transform our economy while safeguarding natural capital and ensuring inclusive, equitable growth. The National Long-Term Development Plan outlines a vision of united, sovereign, advanced, and sustainable Indonesia, placing sustainability, resilience, and equity at the core. Environmental stewardship is seen as not as a barrier to growth, but also a prerequisite for long-term development and also prosperity. To realize this vision, climate action and biodiversity management are embedded in the Medium-Term Development Plan under the National Priority 2. Aligned with our NDC and the Indonesia Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, key indicators such as greenhouse gas emissions intensity reduction and biodiversity management index ensure the environmental goals are integrated into planning and budgeting toward Golden Indonesia 2045. Indonesia's commitment is further strengthened through the updated IPSAP launched in August last year. Fully aligned with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and Indonesia's second NDC, it provides a unified national direction that integrates biodiversity conservation with climate mitigation and adaptation. By reinforcing the climate biodiversity nexus and promoting a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach, the IPSAP ensures healthy ecosystems, underpin our climate goals, and offers a clear roadmap for coordinated action and measurable results. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia's exceptional biodiversity is both an ecological asset and a strategic economic driver. Protecting it supports innovation, new industries, and the growth of a nature-based economy. Under the Medium-Term Development Plan, the agriculture, forestry, and fisheries sectors are projected to raise their GDP contribution, supporting Indonesia's pathway toward the 8% national growth target. This reflects the government commitment to positioning nature-based sectors as engines of sustainable and inclusive growth. Indonesia's natural capital also carries substantial value. In 2022, wild plants and animal species contributed to 10.88 trillion Indonesian rupiah. The tuna, skipjack, and mackerel production reached 39 trillion Indonesian rupiah. And the fishery sector generated over 32 billion US dollar annually. This number shows that investing in biodiversity is a strategic economic priority, strengthening resilience, competitiveness, and also long-term prosperity. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, recent analysis by the Asia Investor Group on climate change underscores the urgency of strengthening the climate biodiversity agenda for the private sector. The study shows that 53% of Asia Pacific economy is highly dependent on nature, meaning business productivity, supply chain stability, and financial performance are directly shaped by ecosystem health. When nature degrades, disruption translates into operational risk, cost for volatility, and also stranded assets, especially for companies whose value chains and raw materials rely on the natural capital. The biodiversity loss is therefore not only an environmental issue, but a core business risk. This finding highlights that businesses can no longer treat biodiversity as an externality. Dependence on ecosystem services such as water, soil fertility, pollination, coastal protection, and climate regulation means nature degradation threatens business continuity and long-term value. As scrutiny over nature-related risk grows, companies with extractive or high-impact models will face rising compliance costs, declining investor confidence, and greater exposure into the physical and transition risk. Conversely, companies that integrate biodiversity into procurement, supply chains, financial planning, and product development will strengthen their operations, competitiveness, and long-term resilience. To support sustainable business practices, Indonesia has established key instruments guiding the private sector. Mandatory sustainability reporting, enhanced transparency, and alignment with the ESG standards. The Indonesian Sustainability Taxonomy helps classify economic activities by environmental impact, encouraging low carbon and nature positive investments. The proper system publicly evaluates a corporate environmental performance, incentivizing continuous improvement. Together, these instruments ensure private sector growth aligns with Indonesia's long-term sustainability goals. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a shift toward nature-positive business model is essential. Companies must move beyond simply minimizing harm by adopting sustainable resource practices, restoring ecosystems, deploying low-carbon and circular technologies, reducing emissions across their value chains, and investing in long-term resilience through innovations, advanced technologies, and data-driven environmental management. Three strategic actions can guide these transitions. First, businesses should embed biodiversity in core decision-making by implementing biodiversity action plan that manage biodiversity risk across operations and supply chains. Second, companies must translate commitments into measurable, scientific-based actions, supported by transparent monitoring and reporting. Third, advancing nature-positive development requires deeper collaboration on scaling up nature finance and stronger governance. Mobilizing investment through blended finance, green and blue bonds, biodiversity credits, and ecosystem service payments together with the government, financial institutions, academia, civil society, and local communities will drive restoration, share risk, and integrates biodiversity into broader development strategies. This collaboration must also address the enabling condition for nature-positive action, including stronger regulation, policy alignment, capacity building, community empowerment, knowledge sharing, and technological support. Furthermore, Indonesia stands ready to strengthen international partnerships. We welcome collaboration in scaling nature-positive investments, strengthening sustainable and responsible value chains, and supporting community-driven economic models. Together, we can build a future where economic growth and environmental stewardship reinforce one and another. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, Indonesia's transition to a climate resilient and nature-positive sustainable economy requires more than government action. The private sector plays a decisive role through its investment choices, resource management, and innovation. Biodiversity action plans will be a key link between national goals and corporate action, helping businesses stay competitive while supporting long-term national resilience. Let us move forward with a shared commitment to ensuring that economic progress strengthens the natural system that supports society. Nature positive development is not only achievable, but essential for Indonesia's future and for global climate and biodiversity goals. Thank you, terima kasih, muito obrigado.
Thank you, Pak Nizar, for the keynote, and you will also stay to present the panel. So, Pak Nizar mentioned that sustainability is the prerequisite for long-term development, and therefore, nature conservation is essential and have to be integrated into the budgeting framework. So, our panel today will highlight a few important points, such as the implementation or the importance of the conservation on biodiversity, and for the companies to set up the commitments and the goals to achieve or as a way towards sustainable business. We will work on the regulatory framework and the policy development of biodiversity conservation to achieve no net loss and have positive impact outcome, as well as the implementation on biodiversity action plans as a tool to address the complexity and as a way actually for the business, especially in the mining sector, to conserve the environment, the community, and also for the biodiversity itself. To lead the session, allow me to welcome our moderator. She is the senior expert of sustainability from the Pertamina Persero, Mbak Wahyudi Astuti.
Thank you, Ibu Mona, as beautiful as always. So, distinguished keynote speaker, Bapak Nizar Marizi, thank you for the keynote speech, Pak. Distinguished speakers who join offline and online. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's panel discussion on Biodiversity Action Plan as a way towards sustainable business. I'm Wahyudi Astuti, and I'll be your moderator for this session. As the global climate continues to shift, ecosystem face growing pressure. So rising temperatures, extreme weather, and changes in how land is used is breaking up natural habitats, so which puts both the biodiversity and people at risk. So today we'll explore how policymakers address biodiversity from energy sectors, how organizations can integrate Biodiversity Action Plan, known as BAP, into their business model, and how this approach can help drive sustainability while maintaining profitability, and what is the global challenge in regard of biodiversity. So now we're joined by a panel of experts who brings unique perspectives to this discussion, to whom I will introduce before they speak. So first we have Miss Artemis Costarelli. So Artemis Costarelli is Director for Nature at IPECA, overseeing biodiversity, ecosystem services, water management, circular economy, NBS and nature-related reporting. She represents IPECA at UN meetings and global forums, engaging with UNEP, CBD, NGOs, IUCN, and industry associations to promote good environmental practices in the oil and gas sector. In 2024, Artemis was seconded to Shell as a biodiversity advisor, working on North Sea Biodiversity Project and supporting regulatory reporting and disclosure. She joined IPECA in 2012 and previously held roles in fuels and products and supply chain. Before that, she worked in sustainability consulting in London and at the Ministry for Environment of Greece on forest and national parks management. Next, we have Dr. Dina Nurul Fitria. Dr. Dina is Dean of Faculty of Science, Engineering and Design, University of Trilogy, with respective lecturing experiences for more than 20 years. She is currently member of the board of National Energy Council or Dewan Energi Nasional, candidacy 2020 to 2025, who joined online. And then we have Bapak Devrinaldo, who is joined offline today. Halo Pak. So Bapak Devrinaldo is Vice President of Health, Safety, Security, and Environment PT Pertamina Hulu Energy. Holds as a Bachelor's in Environmental Engineering and HSCC certification from the Fire Service College UK. Has extensive working experience in subsidiaries of oil and gas industry and collaborating with national and regional stakeholders for over 25 years of experience. Expertise in safety and process safety, asset integrity, environmental and risk management. He has also served as invited speaker at international forums, including the WSO International Award Ceremony and Safety Culture Award and ESS workshop on sustainable infrastructure in Indonesia, and HSC project financing session for the GTB and Balikpapan RDMP project. And next we have Ibu Dermawati, currently served as Director of CSR and Environmental PT Indonesia Morowali Indonesia Park or PT IMIP. So thank you all for being here, and we're looking forward to hear insight from you. So let's dive right in. So we'll begin with the presentation session. So each speaker will share their key insight and perspective for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then we will continue with panel discussion. So for the first speaker, I would like to invite Artemis Costarelli. So Artemis, who is joined online. So Artemis, can you hear us clearly?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, first of all, for the invite. Secondly, I cannot hear anything, but I realize that probably you did the introduction, so thank you for that. So I'm very glad to see that this important session is still and will still be accessible as a recording. And I must say that having been to the last two biodiversity COPs in Montreal and Cali, Colombia, it is the first time really that I see biodiversity action plans being discussed in a COP and even a climate COP. And in my view, this highlights the critical connection and significance of biodiversity conservation and climate change resilience. And thanks to Pertamina for putting this all together. So yes, probably the introduction have been made already. So I'm Artemis, Nature Director from IPICA. And for those that do not know much about IPICA, IPICA is the Global Oil and Gas Association for advancing the environmental and social performance across the energy transition. We were founded in 1974 at the request of the United Nations Environment Programme, and our role since then is twofold. The first role of IPICA is that we represent the oil and gas industry to the UN. And in fact, to this day, we remain the primary channel of communication between the UN and the industry on environmental and climate change issues. And our second role is that we develop and promote the good practice for the oil and gas industry and alternative energy sector across a range of sustainability topics, from carbon action to biodiversity, water and social performance, and sustainable development. But what has IPICA done on biodiversity so far? So we have been working on biodiversity and ecosystem services for more than actually 20 years. IPICA has been actively working to enhance biodiversity management in the energy industry's activities by bringing together the experience and scientific knowledge from within and outside the industry. So we do engage with other stakeholders like IUCN, Fauna and Flora, UNEP WCMC, for example. And we have more than 70 subject matter experts on biodiversity in the IPICA Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services Working Group. And over these years, we have developed a breadth of good practice guides from the best fundamentals, which is all about how a company can integrate best conservation considerations into their business management systems, to guidance on invasive alien species management in the industry. And in 2022, we developed and published the Biodiversity Action Plans guidance for the energy sector. So before coming to this session, I reviewed the commitments that some of IPICA members have made on biodiversity, specifically on BAPS. And it was quite positive to see that a lot of our members actually have made commitments around biodiversity action plans and net positive impact on biodiversity. So just to say a few examples. So for example, I'll go first in Europe and then I'll go to Asia. So Shell has a commitment since 2022, which is to implement biodiversity action plans when operating in critical habitats. And of course, the aim of this is basically to achieve net positive impact on biodiversity in critical habitats. BP also talks about achieving net positive impact on biodiversity in new projects. Total Energies talk about managing biodiversity in new projects by implementing biodiversity action plans for all the new sites in specific areas categorized by the IUCN categories 1 to 5. And they will also deploy BAPS in Ramsar sites. They also have a commitment around BAPS on existing sites. Petrobras has also a commitment which talks about developing BAPS in all of their facilities by the end of 2025. And going to Asia, now Petronas aims to have biodiversity action plans for all existing sites within their operational control, rated very high or high risks, which include measures for ecosystem rehabilitation. And last but not least, Pertamina has also, you will know that better than me, but Pertamina has also been deploying BAPS for exploration projects in Kalimantan, in which they assess habitat sensitivity and they are implementing mitigation measures. BAPS also, which include concrete actions like planting thousands of trees in elephant corridors in Sumatra Island. And also I found another one which was very interesting, and in the offshore environment in Northwest Java, where also Pertamina developed a biodiversity action plan for marine and coastal biodiversity to go beyond compliance and align with ESG and SDGs goals. And of course, many other companies and members of IPICA have been deploying biodiversity action plans, and you can go through those examples and case studies on our BAP guidance, which is publicly available. These were some of the examples that I found online. So developing a biodiversity action plan is basically one approach that companies can take to manage biodiversity risks and ecosystem services that achieve no net loss and net positive impact or just conservation gain. It's the tool that companies use to achieve nature positive outcomes. A BAP sets out actions to mitigate impacts and to conserve or enhance biodiversity, and it identifies priority biodiversity features and detail appropriate management actions, which should be concrete, planned, and measurable. What we have in the IPICA BAP guidance is a get started guide on how companies can actually achieve no net loss and NPI by following the biodiversity action plan. So the key elements of a BAP are, first of all, the key steps are: one, to apply the mitigation hierarchy, so avoid, minimize, restore, and offset. And the mitigation hierarchy, it basically emphasizes that preventing negative impacts first through avoidance and minimization is the first key step before considering any actions related to restoration and then offsetting efforts. The second step is understanding your impacts, primarily the residual impacts of the project, and identify the priority biodiversity features. The third step is understanding the conservation priorities in the area a company operates, which is based on stakeholder engagement. And stakeholder engagement is a very key component of BAPs. And what the IPCA guidance emphasizes is that early and continuous stakeholder engagement to align conservation actions with local or national or international priorities is key to ensure that what actually you do for the conservation is what the area needs in a way. Oh, are you still there? I mean, the lights are off, I see. Okay, you're still there. Okay. So another thing that I would like to emphasize with the stakeholder engagement is that, as I said, it's a central feature of the BAP process. And another key element is that by engaging with stakeholders and consider them as potential partners throughout the process, from scoping to implementation, can be very useful because the stakeholders that you are talking to can review, monitor, and contextualize the shape of the BAP in partnership with your company and can provide different perspectives. And I can bring also my personal experience when I was at Shell and I was working in biodiversity programs in the North Sea. We engaged with a range of stakeholders, and it was a significant learning because we really understood the conservation priorities in the area. So, and thanks to that, Shell, when I was back at Shell, thanks to that, we managed to identify also potential partners that we can work with them and they can deliver the biodiversity program that Shell had. The fourth important element of a BAP is to conduct robust baseline surveys. So it's important to gather detailed data on biodiversity features, habitats, and ecosystems in the project area to understand the baseline conditions. And based on that, you can actually check down 20 years after whether you have actually achieved the net positive impact on biodiversity. And last but not least, there is a need for clear goals. So a BAP should define measurable goals for no-net loss and NPI, such as restoring a specific area of habitat or increasing populations of affected species. I mean, you know this very well, but for any biodiversity program, any restoration program, a BAP needs to secure that it has planned appropriately for resources and has secured the appropriate management. Restoration projects, you may know, are quite expensive. So it's good to identify early in the process the resources that are needed to implement the actions, the timelines, and these resources should include both financial elements, but also other resources like who is going to be involved from the teams, the competencies, the delivery partners, and so on. And the very last step of that, of a BAP, is there is a need to have a monitoring and reporting program in place, and of course a verification process, and possibly by a third party, which will verify that basically the net positive impact on biodiversity has been achieved. And I'll leave it to that. This was more like a very quick overview of our BAP guidance here at IPCA.
And then we will continue with the next speaker. So next we'll hear from Bapak Devrinaldo, who will share his perspective about strategy and challenges in implementing Biodiversity Action Plan for existing and new projects in sensitive area. So Pak Aldo, kindly proceed with your remarks.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Tuti and my dear Pak Nizar Marizi. Thank you very much for the keynote speaker. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, all the distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. Maybe you can show the slide, please. Yeah. Indonesia is one of the beautiful country in the world, as recognized as second mega biodiversity country, and encompassing two of the world 36 biodiversity hotspot. Can we see that slide? Yeah, we have orang utan in Kalimantan or Borneo Island. We have Sumatra tiger. We have Sumatra elephant in the Sumatra Islands. So, which is noticed in the ICN red lines species. Pertamina Hulu Energy is one of the subsidiary national energy company. We covering onshore, offshore, and coastal operation across of Indonesia. As a state on the enterprise, our charge is clear: how safeguard national energy security when we deliver business of exploration and productions. In this basis, PHA face the global challenge, the climate change, biodiversity loss, fragmented habitat, and of course development pressures. If left unmanaged, those force transfer to the operational risk, conflict, delays, and then the higher cost. At the same time, global expectations has moved decisively under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The energy company expected not only avoid harm, but to deliver measurable nature positive impact with the transparent design, delivery that can impact at source, address residuals, and restore ecosystem. For PHA, nature and business go together. Next, we will show how PHA turn this context in actions. Our sustainability policy place protection biodiversity among our core focuses. Practically, that's mean to clear committed every facility since 2020 is governed by NPI-oriented biodiversity action plan, and we try to reach 100% cover 2030. In parallel, we design conservation area and run flora and fauna conservation program across our facility. In 2025, almost 29 our working area and more than 48,000 hectare. At PHA, we use in-house screening tool, preliminary assessment biodiversity action plan. At the first, before any project proceed. Pre-BIP, is implemented to identify biodiversity sensitive to proposed project and determine whether the project location require BAP. Before any project proceeds, our PHE runs a preliminary assessment biodiversity action plan to decide what level the biodiversity planning is required. We look through 5 lenses. 3 lenses is mandatory because of regulatory, license requirement, and third-party requirement. Third-party requirements such as partner or lenders. And the second one is biodiversity values, present or protected area, and ecological sensitive area. And the last one is social, economic, and of course the cultural factor. But one thing that we consider organization purpose. Under organization purpose that present an explicit mandate from our mother company renders the project BFP necessary. In the absence of such mandate, is considered with proportional biodiversity measures. So, what is the biodiversity action plan? Biodiversity action plan is site levels, strategic planning to identify, protect, and restore and manage biodiversity, critical habitat, and rare species and key ecosystem. Is deliver data-driven, KPI-based action, and co-deliver and co-design with the local communities and the local authorities. Today, PHE has 8 biodiversity action plan across our regional operation from Sumatra, Jawa, and then Borneo or Kalimantan and east of Indonesia. One of our biodiversity action plan is Jambaran Tiung Biru is required by third party. I mean that lenders exactly required. Why? Because the project financing applies in the Jambaran Tiung Biru. PHE applies the mitigation hierarchy and all BAPs that I mentioned before. The expectation of the energy company not only avoid harms, but not net losses achievement, but in advance we have to get the net positive impact as the company mandate. We know that the speaker says before that we have 5 mitigation hierarchy, and PHE try to minimum implemented 3 top hierarchy of mitigation: restoration, offset, and ACA, additional conservation activity. Next, let me concrete the 2 portfolio of biodiversity action plan, PHE NWJ and PEP Pendopo-Ville. Next slide, please. Yeah, let me illustrate how BAP translate to delivery into working area, PHE NWJ, offshore, marine, and coastal, and PEP Pendopo-Ville, onshore and terrestrial. For PHE NWJ, our objective is reach net positive impact in 2028. We model existing forecast versus forecast condition and focus on 4 high leverage program. North Coast Java mangrove restoration. The hierarchy we know the restoration and offset, transplantation, coral reef and fish in Sendulang. Hierarchy 4, offset, conservation effort of housebill, sea turtle. Hierarchy ACA, additional conservation activity, and the last one MIMI conservation program is hierarchy ACA, additional conservation activity. For PEP Pendopo, our objective is reach net positive impact 2029. Focus in the Sumatra elephant hen habitat conservation program and Bolian forest conservation program. For those examples show that how PHE use BAP to translate commitment into measurable outcomes across our land and our sea. Program under Biodiversity Action Plan are developed, are designed with the local communities and deliver partnership with the local authorities and natural resource conservation agency to ensure align with the national objective. Next slide, please. Yeah, building on those examples, let me connect to the dot on how we integrate biodiversity into the way we run the business through sustainable development triple bottom line. Environmental protection, we operate within ecological limits through biodiversity action plan. We set a target KPI monitoring to deliver non-net loss as a baseline and achieve net positive impact as the mandate. Social equity, we co-design, co-develop and deliver with the local communities and partner with the local authorities and natural resource conservation agency. Economic growth, strong biodiversity management can reduce disruption, permitting risk, and protect our license to operate and create durable values for shareholder and society. Protecting biodiversity is not our responsibility, but is our resilient strategy and core business enabler. The business value is clear. We contribute to Indonesian SDG, IBICP goals, and national nature positive agenda. We strengthen reputation and stakeholder trust, including investor and regulator. And we build the government and data system needed for the credible future pathways, such as carbon, biodiversity, and nature credits. Next slide, please. Yeah, allow me to close our key takeaway and next step. First, commitment. PHE is committed to achieving net positive impact through systematic biodiversity action plan implementation across portfolio. Second, this is core business enabler. Sustainability and biodiversity protection are how we reduce disruption and permitting risk and protect our license to operate and strengthen reputation and trust, not just a compliance exercise. That's how we deliver. Every program we co-design, co-develop with the local communities and partnership with the local authorities and resources with Natural Resources Conservation Agency, ensuring share benefit and strong project acceptance. 4. How we profit. We track qualities progress with KPIs and disclose the result so impact is credible and transparent. We will deepen monitoring and assurance, scale innovation, expand partnership with the government, academia, industry, and communities, aligning with Indonesia IBICAP and Global Nature Positive by 2030 pathway toward the GBF vision of living in harmony with nature by 2050. Our business thrive when the nature thrive. PHE is building legacy of energy that sustain both people and planet. We will embed net positive impact in every project and co-manage with the local communities and partnership with the local authorities and report transparently. So energy security and thriving ecosystem advance together. Thank you very much. Is my last slide. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Aldo. If I may highlight your points that upstream activities of Pertamina Hulu Energy are carried out throughout Indonesia, and it's a huge magnitude. Along with Indonesia richness of biodiversity, that it has to be conducted without compromising its richness of biodiversity. So your pra-BAP or preliminary BAP helps to screen the biodiversity sensitivities to determine whether a project requires a BAP or not, and some biodiversity action plans with net positive impact target that have been committed by Pertamina Hulu Energy. I think the methodology is also aligned with the methodology explained by IPK, Artemis. Thank you. We'll come back to you with the discussion. And next, I'd like to invite Ibu Dina Nurul Fitria, who will share about mainstreaming nature into national energy policy. So the time is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and partners. I'm Dina Nurul Fitria, members of the Board National Energy Council. Today, I would deliver my presentations in video tapping via Zoom. Due to yesterday force majeure that Blue Zone is closed for the investigation after fire situation. So my today presentation should be in mainstreaming nature into national energy policy. It is an hour to speak on behalf of Indonesia National Energy Council, Dewan Energi Nasional, an institution mandated to ensure that our nation's energy policies are secure, sustainable, and aligned with the long-term well-being of our people. Today, I wish to share Indonesia's perspective on the energy transition and our commitment to biodiversity protection, energy security, economic resilience, and high-integrity climate cooperation under Article 6. Thanks to Mr. Nizi for your keynote speech from Bappenas, and thanks to Pak Aldo and delegates for this session also, and thanks to parties such as like honorable speakers from international speakers and our colleagues from Indonesia. Mandate of the Energy Council, Dewan Energi Nasional, Indonesia is entrusted with shaping, harmonizing, overseeing of energy, national energy policy, and the national energy plan. Our responsibility is not only technical, it is profoundly also ethical. We must guarantee that every Indonesian household, every small business, every farmer, every fisherman, and every worker in the fossil fuel sector has access to reliable and affordable energy while we build a low-emission resilient national energy system. Our President, Mr. Prabowo, His Excellency, mandated to our national energy planning that we have to make sure that achieve energy independence and national energy security, also fulfill Indonesia's commitment, thereby strengthen national climate resilience and support the advancement of economy. And regarding this national energy planning, our approach is grounded in science, economics, and social justice. We aim to balance national sovereignty, environmental protection, and the realities of a developing archipelagic nation. That's why in our government regulation number 40 2025 on national energy policy, the grand strategy in place with maximize new old and renewable energy and also minimize the use of fossil energy and for the energy transition to reach peak emissions by 2035 and also net zero emissions by 2060. Regarding this reference, so the renewable energy mix targets should be 19% up to 23% by 2030 and 70% up to 72% by 2060. So there is a lot of investment and so funding needed to make sure the target is in place. So funding for energy, sector decarbonization, and energy resilience through national state budget, regional state budget, and other national and international sources coming through. So support for financing private entities and also compensation for state-owned enterprise that is mandated to Pertamina and also PLN. In make sure the energy transition and energy resilience program in place. So preparation and improvement of human resources capacity in energy transition programs. And beside all above, the important things is international cooperation and diplomacy to strengthen Indonesia's energy leadership position. Energy transition should be maintained also for the biodiversity as a vital asset for the energy transition. Indonesia is one of the world's most biodiverse nations. Our forests, mangroves, peatlands, coastal ecosystems, and marine resources are not only national treasures, they are global climate stabilizers. Therefore, biodiversity is not an optional add-on to energy policy. It is an essential strategic foundation. As presentation mentioned, this one is such as like for wind and for the geothermal, we have the realizations targeted for ambitious targeted. This is 2,743 for geothermal and 1,052 for wind resources. That is the biodiversity side should be there. Protection is not optional add-on to energy policy. It is an essential strategic foundation. As we expand renewable energy, develop mineral-based industries, and modernize our grid, Indonesia is committed to avoiding trade-offs and would degrade high-value ecosystems. We are strengthening governance to ensure that land use decisions, licensing processes, and energy investment protect biodiversity, uphold community rights, and also minimize ecological fragmentation. We have also published and submitted the alignment of second NDC. So our National Energy Council strive to align what is the second NDC targeted and also for the energy planning. So the nature-based solutions, forest protection, peatland restoration, coastal resilience are central pillars of our climate and energy pathway. In the LCCP low scenario or low national energy planning scenario and high national energy planning scenario, it shows that the level of GHG emissions in the energy sectors is still 129 million tons of CO2, where negative emissions from the forestry and land use sectors will be able to absorb to reach net zero emission in 2060 or sooner. The forestry sector has already not sink carbon in 2030. And that's why CPOE's current policy scenarios for CM1 of N. In this scenario, mitigation efforts are in accordance with domestic resource capabilities following historical trends between 2011 up to 2020 period, which increased during NDC implementation in 2020 up to 2030 period, it extended to 2035. It is because our government targeted to aim at 8% economic growth. So it is assumed at in 2030 and 70% in 2035. So Indonesia's energy mix is undergoing a strategic transformation. Our goals are clearer: reduce carbon intensity, diversity our supply, strengthen domestic value chains, and ensure remains affordable and accessible for all. So to make sure that ambitious target in place, in national energy planning, government regulation number 40 year of 2025, we propose we regulate the carbon tax and performance-based incentives or payment for GHG emissions reduction efforts in the energy sectors. The Article 83, the central government may impose carbon tax on the utilization of renewable energy to be implemented gradually with due consideration of social, economic, and environmental impacts. The imposition of the carbon tax shall be carried out in accordance with the laws and regulations in the field of taxation. Article 84, the central government, regional governments, hand in hand with the business entities, may obtain incentive or performance-based payments for efforts to reduce GHG emissions in the energy sector. And for the provision of incentives or performance-based payments for efforts to reduce GHG emissions in the energy sector should be implemented in accordance with the provisions of national energy planning and also laws and regulation in regional area. So regarding the collaboration in Article 6 implementation for the biodiversity impact, we here at the COP30, Indonesia proposed a framework for just and inclusive transition. As COP30 hosts promote the concept of solusi dialogue, so Indonesia sees strong alignment with our own vision. BELAM solutions emphasize equity, inclusion, indigenous leadership, and nature-based resilience. This principle resonate deeply with Indonesia's approach. So that's why we need the pentaholic approach. We propose just transition means strengthening community participation, ensuring fair benefit sharing from carbon finance and renewable energy investments, protecting forest, peatlands, and marine ecosystems, and ensuring that vulnerable groups, households, MSMEs, farmers, fishermen, and workers are protected during this transformation. So the collaboration should be in global wide also. The global south must work together to ensure that our transitions are not only low carbon, but also pro-poor, pro-nature, and pro-development. So we propose, Excellency, that energy transitions cannot succeed if it undermines national resilience. Indonesia approach clean energy not as a cost, but as investment in long-term security and prosperity. Indonesia optimize the utilization of energy and mineral resources as natural resources in a sustainable manner to make sure integrity in offsetting the remaining greenhouse gas emissions from the energy sector. So today in COP30, Indonesia stands ready to collaborate with global partners to mobilize finance, technology, and capacity building for genuine, measurable climate progress. We call for increased concessional finance for emerging economies, fair and predictable Article 6 rules, high integrity carbon market cooperation, and South-to-South partnerships that will elevate our collective capabilities. We believe that global climate solutions must not only reduce emissions, they must limit this, protect nature, and strengthen economic resilience. Excellencies, distinguished speakers, and participants, let me end the presentation because I have to catch up my flight right away. So Indonesia's energy transition is not merely a climate agenda, it is national development agenda rooted in sovereignty, biodiversity protection, economic stability, and social justice. With strong governance, inclusive participation, and integrity-driven cooperation, we believe that Indonesia can have a just, resilient, and sustainable energy in the future. So I thank you. I look forward to our continued collaboration. Obrigado, de nada, terima kasih, thank you, all the best luck for us.
Okay, thank you Ibu Dina. So Ibu Dina is highlighting Indonesia's national energy policy with grand strategies in the new regulation, maximize new and renewable energy, minimize the use of fossil energy, and optimize the use of gas as a transition fuel. There is a need to achieve this energy self-sufficiency, but it shall be done without compromising Indonesia's biodiversity. Next, I would like to invite Ibu Dermawati, who will share about bridging industry and nature, strengthening ecosystem connectivity through PT IMIP's biodiversity program. So Ibu Dermawati, the time is yours.
Good day everyone, it's an honor to be here in Beleng for COP30. My name is Dermawati, I'm from PT IMIP, Indonesia Morowali Industrial Park. Today I want to talk about how we are bridging the gap between heavy industry and nature. Our topic today is strengthening ecosystem connectivity through IMIP biodiversity program. We are bringing the story of Morowali, Indonesia, to the heart of the Amazon to share our commitment to a sustainable future. Next slide, please. As we gather here, connecting Indonesia and Brazil, we recognize a shared responsibility. IMIP is a key player in the global nickel supply chains, which fuel the world's journey toward renewable energy. However, we face a dual challenges, maintaining rapid industrial growth while addressing the climate crisis. We do understand that development can lead to ecological fragmentation. That is why we have launched our Biodiversity Action Plan. These are not just policies, they are a science-based blueprint designed to protect critical habitat and endangered species within our operational footprint. Next slide, please. Our biodiversity management plan is strictly aligned with national legislation and international finance cooperation. We can see here, we move beyond basic greening to comprehensive rehabilitation. Our strategy stands on 4 pillars. The first one is biodiversity studies. The second one is the EduPark, a 23-hectare hub for research and conservation. The third one is natural wildlife conservation, which is establishing specific zones for Sulawesi endemic species. And the last one is coastal and marine conservation, restoring mangrove and coral reef to support climate action. Next slide, please. This is the biodiversity studies overview because we cannot manage what you do if not measured. We began with extensive habitat mapping and ecological baseline studies with an expert, and it conducted across 11 terrestrial and 9 marine sampling points. This result revealed a rich biodiversity around our industrial park. There are 160 flora species, 81 bird species, and 55 coral fish species, and critical number of mammal and herpetofauna. This data forms the foundation of our biodiversity management plan. Next slide, please. This is the endemic flora. Let's look closer at the flora. Out of the 160 species identified, 5 of them are endemic to our region. Crucially, we found species like Dillenia celebica and Sarcoteca celebica present at all sampling points. Some of these, like the Kejelbergi or jambu-jambuan in our language, are specific to this landscape. Our goal is to ensure these unique genetic resources remain viable alongside our operation. Next slide, please. This is in terms of herpetofauna, the stakes are high. We identify 11 endemic species. I want to draw your attention to Okidoziga tempotica. We found this species at one specific location and is classified as critically endangered. We also monitor Sophenomorphus tropidonotus. This finding drives the specific placement of our conservation zone. Next slide, please. This is the endemic bird. Our skies are equally diverse. Of 81 bird species, where 35 are endemic. Species like Dicaceum aurolimbatum or yellow-sided flowpecker are found across multiple sites. While many are currently least concerned, their abundance is a bioindicator of ecosystem health that we are committed to maintain. Next slide. This slide highlights the most critical aspect of our terrestrial conservation. We host 10 endemic mammal species. We have recorded footprint of the anoa, which is endangered. We also host the Sulawesi tarsius and the macaca. Protecting this species is not optional, it's a priority for IMIP. Next slide, please. And the conservation is an ongoing process. In the Tabo protected area, is a forest area near IMIP, we practice adaptive management. We continuously track biodiversity indicator, monitoring 24 plant species and various animal classes. If the data shows ecological changes, we adjust our management strategies immediately. We don't just set the plan and forget it. We evolve with the data that we found in the field. Next slide, please. This slide will show the translocation of Macaca tonkeana because sometimes active intervention is necessary to reduce human-wildlife conflict. In collaboration with BKSDA, the Natural Resource Conservation Center, also with the community alongside in our park, we successfully translocated a group of Makaka tonkeana. In April 2024, 24 individuals were safely moved to Tokobay Wildlife Sanctuary. This ensured their safety while allowing industrial operation to proceed responsibly. Next slide, please. And this is the slide of the IMIP Edu Park. Part of Natural Wildlife Conservation is show our flagship terrestrial project, the IMIP Edu Park, originally planned as a small arboretum. It has evolved into a 23-hectare integrated center. It includes a horticultural garden, a greenhouse nursery, environmental lab, and a waste management system. It serves two purposes. The first one is strictly complying with green open space regulation, and the second one is acting as a local plant seed bank for our land rehabilitation effort. Next slide. Okay, now we're moving from land to sea. We operate along the rich coast of Morowali or Sombori Island. We recognize the potential of blue carbon. Our focus is on mangrove rehabilitation on coral reef restoration. We start this project since 2022. I am proud to report that our coral reef rehabilitation project have achieved of 92% survival rate. This is tangible evidence of our long-term commitment. Next slide, please. Now here you can see the scale of our mangrove effort. Between 2018 and 2025, we have planted over 70,000 mangroves. You can see significant spike in activity in 2003 and 2024. The nearly 20,000 planted each year, this is not just about number, it's about carbon. This mangrove represents a potential absorption of over than 8,800 tons of CO2 equivalent. And next slide, please. And this is 2025. IMIP expanding its environmental commitment beyond our immediate industrial area. We are undertaking a project in Brebes, Central Java, together with the local community, planting 3,000 seedling. Next. And in Palu, Central Sulawesi, we plant another 10,000 seedling last month. By using digital platform like Mangrove Tech, we ensure transparency and traceability in our carbon absorption calculation. This is part of our target of 150,000 seedling that we want to plant. Next. Now we're returning to the Sombori Island. Our coral restoration uses both table and rip star method. But more importantly, we are empowering the local community. We have trained local cadre conservation and held tourism workshop. We believe that for conservation to be sustainable, the local community must be guardian of their own environment. Next. And this is the last one. The future project is a wildlife conservation area. Looking ahead, we know that endemic animals are vulnerable to habitat loss. To address this, IMIP is formally planning to allocate specific conservation zone within our concession. This natural wildlife conservation area will provide a permanent natural habitat for the endemic species we discussed earlier, ensuring they have a home amidst industrial development. Ladies and gentlemen, IMIP Industrial might not only about producing nickel. It's about shaping Indonesia's sustainable destiny, from mangrove of Morowali to the forest protecting our endemic macacas. These efforts are an irreversible commitment. As we stand here at COP30, we believe industry must act as nature steward. We are building a living model where economic growth harmonizes with life on Earth. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Looking forward to see discussion with you.
So thank you Ibu Dermawati for sharing the biodiversity done by PT IMIP and the action plan, the nature wildlife conservation, coastal marine conservation, through mangrove rehabilitation and community-based conservation, and soon to have the biodiversity park or Edu Park IMIP. So I think we have heard 5 powerful perspectives from policymakers, industries, and the international organization. let's now move into a short discussion with the speakers. So I would like to address this question first to Artemis. Artemis, are you still with us? Hello? So, am I audible to you? Can you hear us? Am I audible, Artemis? Okay. Is there a problem with the... Okay, can you hear us? Okay. If it's still difficult, maybe I can... Okay. It's we have some difficulties with the online speakers, so I would love to ask this question first to Paldo then. Paldo, in your presentation you mentioned about the preliminary BAP, the six point to do the pre-BAP, and it's interesting that you also mentioned about the social, economy and cultural factor is being considered in the pra-BAP. So could you elaborate more on this aspect and the example of the situation that you face and what is the action plan?
Yeah, okay, thank you. In the pre-BAP stage, social, economy, and cultural factor is considered to assess, to ensuring that project planning not only about ecological sound, but we protecting well-being and resilience local communities. Referring to biodiversity action plan in the PHE, NWJ, and PAP Pendopo fields, we look deep how community social conditions are connected to the surrounding natural resources. For example, in PHE NWJ, we can say that coastal communities is highly depend on the mangrove and the fisheries. It's not only about income, source of income, but is about how long-term economic resilience for them. And the Pendopo fields, we know that our activities interact with the movement corridor of Sumatran elephants and Burian forests are the function both critical habitat and then customary forests with deep social and cultural significance for the local communities. Our action is yearly transparent engagements, how we involve the communities and then the local institutions to ensure that implementation are proceed in line with the local communities' expecting and interest. And the second one's that co-design conservation measures such as mangrove restoration that I have say before, elephant corridor protection, and collaborative management of the Burian forest to that ecological benefits are achieved parallelly with social and economic benefit for the local communities. and the dirt adjusting project designed to strengthen local livelihood is prevent to potential conflict and enhance long-term acceptance of conservation program. So by grounding our conservation activities in the prevailing social, economic, and cultural realities, our pathway toward net positive income become more robust. So this is how durable outcomes are created, delivering benefit for people and planet then at the same time.
Okay, thank you, Pak. So it is important to assess not only the ecological value, yeah?
Correct.
Because biodiversity actually related to the social economy. If we maintain the biodiversity risk,
It
means we maintain also the social economy of the local communities. And the cultural factor, it is interesting, yeah. So it is also related to local community, and it can avoid potential conflict, something like that, yeah. Okay, thank you, Pak Aldo. And next, I would like to ask Pak Nizar. Pak Nizar, thanks for staying with us, Pak. So, Pak Nizar, based on your point of view, how can partnership, so between government that strive to achieve the energy self-sufficiency and the industries and the international organization accelerate the biodiversity outcomes? What actually is the expectation from the government? Over to you.
Yes, thank you. So, when we talk partnership, they can be accelerating the biodiversity outcome. If we, in the sustainability issue, we always have that we have a different but common but differentiated responsibilities between the government, the companies, and also with the international organizations. But when it comes to capabilities, the capabilities are also different, but it is complementary. For the government will set provide the direction and also the enabling policies, while the private sector will brings the investment, technology, and also how to influence the operation more green. And also the international organizations will provide us the science, the standard, and also the global best practices. And when these three align, the biodiversity effort that we want to conserve and also to speed up the sustainable use of biodiversity will become more faster, more scalable, and also measurable. And in Indonesia, this collaboration is especially critical for sectors like Pertamina, an oil and gas company, because the operations is near the high value ecosystems. So the strong biodiversity action plans, also the consistent application of mitigations, and also transparent in reporting, and also the increasing the nature positive investment will be essential for these efforts. And as the government, we expect that the companies will continue to integrating the biodiversity as the core of the decision making and also in operations. While we at the government side, we are also improving the policy, certainty, national planning, and also access to nature financing. And together, I think this partnership will deliver the real biodiversity gains and supporting Indonesia to paving our pathway to the sustainability and also resilience economy.
Thank you, Pak. And that's interesting. So I would come back to Pak Aldo. In response to this, Pak, so how does that align with what you see in the field to answer the expectation from the government?
Yeah, as they mentioned, the government's perspective, the mandate for the Pertamina is not only about how we safeguard the national energy security, but also accelerating positive income for the biodiversity. As my presentation has said that the global biodiversity framework expected to the energy company not only avoid harms, but also to deliver the measurables net positive outcomes. So, for example, in the PHA, we have delivered in the translate to the systematic practice. What I said that we implemented the pre-assessment biodiversity action plan for the PHE, ONWJ, and the PEP Pendopo fields.
So it can be done aligned with the expectation from the government.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think we have limited time, so the time is up. So we've heard some truly valuable insight today from the regulatory frameworks, the global challenge, and the strategic importance of biodiversity in business to the practical steps. Before we finish, I would like to take the key takeaway from this panel discussions. So related to the energy self-sufficiency, yes, we need to achieve this, but without compromising Indonesia's biodiversity. Industries have the commitment to fulfill the expectation from the government in respect to the richness of biodiversity through BAP. Partnership and collaboration between government, industry, and international organization is pivotal to accelerate biodiversity outcomes. And biodiversity is not just protecting nature. It's about ensuring the long-term sustainability and resilience of our company and our communities. So I'd like to thank to our keynotes and speaker, Pak Nizar, Ibu Dina, Pak Aldo, Ibu Dermawati, Artemi for the thoughtful contribution and your engagement to the questions. So let's continue to take actions because a sustainable business is one that thrives alongside nature, not apart from it. So thank you everyone. Please give our panelists a warm applause. Thank you, Pak.
Okay, congratulations PT Pertamina for flexing the mitigation effort of biodiversity not to focus only to avoid or minimize the biodiversity loss, but also compensate, restore, and add more conservation actions. And also when building the above, also engage, co-design it, as you said, with communities. So optimize their local knowledge and ensure the local community's interest as well. So Pertamina is not only engaging biodiversity conservation as a compliance matter, but also a reason for the business to thrive.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I do apologize for the technical glitch we experienced. We have to run and operate with the limited sources that we have, but we